Mayor Vince Gray of Washington, D.C. just returned from a trade mission from China where he announced the launch of the D.C. China Center in Shanghai. It will be the district's first foreign trade office. Mayor Gray joins us now live in the studio. Thank you so much for being here. Let me first start by asking you, you just returned, and of course, I can't neglect what Mike was talking about earlier, which was these significant storms that have left millions out of power. Yeah. 1 million are still left without power on the East Coast. What's the latest?
Well, it's been a very difficult experience for us in the city. It's what I came home to when I got back from China. On Friday night, we had a storm that hit here. We had 60 to 70,000 people who were out of power at that point. We've now had a restoration of many of those people, down to about 10,000 at this stage.
Let's talk about your trip to China. Very big development. You came back with, well, not you, but the developers you brought with you, the trade businesses you brought with you, significant amounts of investments within the D.C. area. $40 million has already been committed. Let me start by asking you, how did this trip first come about in terms of the making of the trip to Beijing?
We actually talked about this for several months. We worked, for example, with some friends at George Washington University. The dean of the business school there, Dean Guthrie, is a China scholar. And he had lived in China, and we had conversations with him. And he suggested that we think about expanding our operations to China and then work hard to bring some of the business there and open the doors to our own business leaders there. And
when you got to Beijing with your delegation, a significant delegation, by the way, and you stepped off the plane and were welcomed by the Chinese officials there, including your counterparts in Beijing, what was that like?
It was overwhelming, and it was such a warm welcome to the people of the District of Columbia, and that really characterized the entire time that we were there. We met with the mayor of Beijing, we met with the mayor of Suzhou and entered into agreements with both of them. We met with Chairman Jia, the fourth ranking official in China, and then we met with a number of business leaders as well. And frankly, universally, we were very well received.
Could you talk about the topics that were discussed in terms of whether some concerns they were raising about the United States economy or specifically along the East Coast? What was the discussions, if you will?
Well, we went with several objectives, and they were around being able to increase the presence of technology here in the U.S. and working with business interests there to see what interest they may have in coming to the United States in those areas, working on tourism, education, and then other information areas. And we worked with those firms to see if we could actually get them to think about investing in the United States. You mentioned the, you mentioned the EB-5 program earlier, and we had a group of investors who collectively are investing $40 million in a project here in Washington, the City Market at O Street. That's our first, and we hope there will be more.
Let's talk about that project a little bit because it did make some headlines. $40 million committed for a $300+ million project, as you mentioned here near the convention center in downtown Washington, D.C. 40 million, while it's not a massive amount of number, those dollar figures, as you add them up from different individual investors, are significant for the city. How big of an impact is it for the city?
It's a huge impact in two ways. One, the sheer magnitude of the dollars. That's actually 80 investors, each of whom invested $500,000. So that will move that project along more rapidly than it otherwise would have. But at the same time, we worked with others, now that people are involved in this, to see if we could increase those investments. For example, the Wharf, which is a $2 billion project down on the waterfront in Washington. Another office project down in Southwest Washington. So what this did was set the precedent, and I think more and more people will see that Washington, D.C. is a great place to invest, very low risk, and I think we'll open the door to more.
While the EB-5 program is significant, it's not well known among the international community.
Right.
I assume you're going to talk with other mayors and the other counterparts around the country. But as you talk to folks in China, how big of a demand is there? Because part of the EB-5 is not just investing money, it's also getting a green card.
That's exactly right, and that's the quid pro quo, so to speak, the trade-off. Again, essentially, if you're willing to invest $500,000 or more and can show that there would be at least 10 jobs associated with it, you get a visa to come to America. We had last year 123,000 visitors to Washington, D.C. From China. So we hope that this will increase the interest in people coming to Washington, D.C. From China, in terms of tourism, and those who may want to have a visa and stay with us for a while.
Now, did you invite the mayor of Beijing to come visit Washington,
Absolutely.
D.C.?
You know, we entered into a renewal of our sister city agreement. The first sister city agreement between Washington and Beijing was entered into way back in 1984. It was renewed back in the early 2000, you know, right after the turn of the century. But we entered into a new agreement that will really focus on concrete projects and goals, you know, for the two cities. And of course, I extended an invitation to Mayor Guo to come to Washington. I hope he'll take me up on.
Did he say yes?
He will think about it.
He will think about it.
I think he will. I think we've established a good relationship, and so much of this is about relationships, being able to work together in a trusting environment. And I really left feeling good about the relationship we have begun to establish.
It's absolutely great having you here. One last question I want to ask you is, do you feel as if you're a sort of mayoral ambassador to China, because there's so much interest in what's happening in China, and for China there must be a lot of interest in what's happening in municipalities in the city level in the United States as well? I
really felt like I was in a position to be able to set a precedent, to open a door. And frankly, for us now to have an office in Shanghai, we'll have a 24/7, 365-day presence there now, which will help to provide a bridge between certainly Shanghai, the Washington, D.C., and then other cities as well. So it was wonderful to be in a position to be able to cement some of those relationships.
Congratulations on a very successful trip, and also on additional development here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much.
Mayor Vincent Gray.